District 4C5 Cabinet Secretary, Evelyn Butler. Let's also make sure I describe what you are. Evelyn, you are the Vice President of Technical Services at Solar Energy Industries Association. Is that correct? We had a request from one of our members a few months back to maybe have someone speak about the solar industry. So you can kind of take it from there. And then I just real quick want to welcome everyone online besides who's here today. So we got Line Dean and Dave Altucker, PG Richard Kerr. Good to see you, Lewis, this morning. And so you can take it from here, everyone, okay?
Sure, thanks, Brent. I just want to make sure folks can hear me okay. Volume's all right. Okay, so it's a little bit open today as to what I'm going to speak about, but I will make sure to leave plenty of time for questions and any other curiosities you might have about our industry. As you could tell, I am doing this Zoom from home. I fortunately am unable to join you at the restaurant today because I've got some other commitments. My organization's on the East Coast, so we tend to start a little bit early with a lot of fun things. Just to give you a little bit more information, and you can also find this info on our website, which is seia.org. As Line Brent mentioned, or Zone Chair Brent, we don't often talk about, our day jobs in Lions. We're mostly focused on the service and the types of things that we can do for others. But him having discovered that I actually work in the solar industry, and for the Solar Energy Industries Association, he thought this might be a good opportunity for me to share some information. As Brent mentioned, I'm a vice president of technical services. A lot of folks say, what does that mean? And in fact, my role is pretty wide in terms of the technology itself. I'm mostly focused on the equipment.
Cash rounds or roasting potatoes, or you can upgrade food.
He went away.
Audio is gone.
She's still there, but
there we go. Sorry about that. Yep, sorry about that. My mistake. My finger slipped there onto the mute button. But in addition to the technology, my responsibilities range from everything that includes technical regulation in building codes. So that's all of the rules under which the equipment is actually installed in homes, buildings, or out in the field in larger solar projects. I do a lot in terms of regulatory and legislative work and support. I'm also responsible for not only the initial installation, but activities that also include the care and maintenance, or what we call operations and maintenance of the equipment through the end of its service lifetime, which is often 25 years and longer. In addition, my responsibilities also cover workforce development. Solar has been one of the fastest growing industries in the last 10 years. And we have about 250,000 workers in our industry. And so part of my responsibility is also ensuring that we've got a continued pipeline of interested folks wanting to work in the industry, everything from not only the technical side, engineering, technicians, but also all the other roles such as finance, business development, sales, et cetera. And then the last thing I'll mention in terms of areas of responsibilities, I also have a global corporate social responsibility, which is essentially making sure that we have the proper supply chains of components and materials in order for those equipments to be manufactured in many different parts of the world, as well as here within the US. And then also making sure that at what we call end of life, that there's a proper disposal or decommissioning process in place, so that we're also responsibly making sure that we are removing the systems and ensuring that they're either recycled, reused, or refurbished. I've been with the organization for about 5 years now. And prior to that, I actually worked for over 25 years at a company called Underwriters Laboratories, which is a premier product safety testing and certification organization based in the Chicagoland area. And while I was there, I was responsible for UL's global solar business. So we did a lot of work in terms of testing and making sure that the equipment that was being manufactured and brought into the US was properly constructed and didn't pose any additional safety hazards when installed. So I'll stop there as far as I'm concerned. And then I thought what I could do is just talk a little bit about solar itself. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. As I mentioned, we have quite a lot of information on our website if you're interested in digging deeper into some of the areas that I mentioned. Solar is pretty diverse in terms of the types of systems and applications that can be applied. There's, of course, many of you may know the solar that you can put on your rooftop. If you are interested in becoming what we call an independent power producer, it's electricity that's generated and complements what you have available from the electric grid itself. In the last several years, in particular in California, we've seen quite a lot of solar from a residential and commercial industrial perspective, and that's mainly because of the PG&E power, public safety power shutdowns, where a lot of folks were not really satisfied with having that type of inconsistency or ambiguity about their electricity supply. And so we have seen a lot of interest in folks installing or having installed their own solar and energy storage systems so that they could essentially run independent from the grid for all of their critical power needs while those events were happening. We've also seen a lot of deployment and interest on the parts of corporations, organizations, small businesses, and others who are interested in also investing in solar on site so that they have a little bit more control of their monthly energy expenses. And so they may either invest in leasing or purchasing a system of their own. Some good examples is the new Apple headquarters in Cupertino, California. Its entire rooftop is covered by solar. And so that takes care of about, I believe it's 95% of their total on-site power needs for their office spaces. You've also heard maybe other organizations investing in solar. And if they're not doing it directly on site, such as on their buildings, they may be contracting with a larger solar project, like you might find out in some of the more rural or desert areas where they're building, projects that are, 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt and up. And typically that means it's powering something, like 250,000 homes or more. But at the same time, these organizations can sign these procurement agreements to basically say they want to get their electricity from that particular solar power plant. And then lastly, the last application that we commonly see is what we call utility scale or large scale solar. Those are the large projects that you are seeing built here and there, similar to some of the wind projects that you might be familiar with if you're driving through the Altamont Pass into the Bay Area. There's a large set of wind towers there. And then obviously here in the Sacramento area, there's a number of different larger solar projects as well. SMUD is a very big investor in solar. PG&E has some more remote plants elsewhere, and then they're transmitting that solar power here for use. So just a couple, I guess, global statistics that I'll share with you. I mentioned earlier that solar is one of the largest and fastest growing in terms of new electricity capacity in the US and globally. Just 2 years ago, we grew from, by 13% last year. It was something more like 20%. And then this last year, even despite COVID, our solar actually made up about 46% of all the new electricity generating capacity in the US. So there's still quite a lot of investment that is going on, and a lot of impetus for that is what you might be hearing at state and federal levels about decarbonization of our electricity supply. And what that's intended to do is just provide more diverse resources for electricity that don't have negative effects on the environment, which is something that solar is able to provide. Let's see here if I can swing through a couple other things that you might be interested in. We have been growing at an average rate of about 49% in the US. We had just a couple of years ago, 81 gigawatts, which is enough to power about 15 million homes. I think our last statistics put us over close to 90 gigawatts, which is getting us more towards 17, 18, 19 million homes. In particular, in California, one thing that has been an impetus for the growth for solar is 2 years ago, the California Energy Commission and the California Building Standards Commission passed a regulation that requires all new residential home construction in California must include solar. And so that allows new homeowners to already be able to take advantage of the benefits of having solar energy on site, and really providing them with more consistency and predictability as to their expected monthly electricity. And so that's something that is going on today. You'll see not only that applies to development homes or some of the larger home construction projects, but it also applies to custom homes and other things. And most recently, there's also another proposal from the California Energy Commission going through that will also require solar on all new commercial construction as well. So things like warehouses, some of the larger businesses, shopping malls, things like that will also have a requirement not only for solar, but also for energy storage so that they're able to store any excess electricity that they gather. The other thing I'll mention is investment in the industry is rising every year, 16%, 18%, 20% over the last few years. Our market capitalization is estimated at about $25 billion. One thing that has been very influential in that is the federal investment tax credit, which applied basically means that if you decide to own the solar that you're putting onto your home or your building, you can qualify for a tax credit against the purchase price of that solar. And so initially the investment tax credit was 30%. In 2020, it reduced to 26%. 2021, it was supposed to reduce to 20%. And then 10% starting next year. However, the current legislation that you may be hearing about that's going through the reconciliation process in both the House and Senate federally is intended to actually reset that tax credit to that original 30% level with a different step down schedule. So that will, we believe, bring some more continued investment in the sector and more impetus for folks to seek out solar. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure I'm keeping an eye on the time, or feel free, Brent, if you want me to, just move to questions. I'm happy to do that as well.
Sure. A lot of times that's just fine. People, if they have questions or if you think of something else.
Sure. I'm happy to stop there. Like I said, we've got a lot of market information and statistics on our website. I'm also happy to share information offline if folks are interested in, photos or, other information about what I'm talking about, that type of thing. But I will say that just from an organization perspective, one of the things that our association focuses on is obviously representing our members. We have over 1,000 members that we represent. They range, from manufacturers of equipment to developers, installers, finance and legal companies, operations and maintenance companies. Again, all of these 250,000 plus employees. And so what we're looking out for is opportunities to help continue to help the industry grow. And then also at the same time, ensure that we're defending our industry from, other opponents or folks who would prefer to see other types of electricity resources be more prevalent. But at the end of the day, the U.S. Electricity demand continues to grow. And so we do believe that there is a lot of opportunity for everyone in this space. So I know someone's got a question. Unfortunately, I can't see names on my view. I don't know if you could help me with that.
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm Dave. Hey,
hi, Dave.
I'm curious. You're in a relatively new business. What is the half-life of the average solar panel?
We have seen, I want to say, earlier stage panels that were produced, prior to the year 2000, maybe even 2005. We were seeing a little bit shorter lifetime, and that's because the technology wasn't quite as perfected as it is today. However, we are seeing, lifetimes of about average 12 to 15 is what the warranties cover, but they're intended to perform for 20 or 25 years. And so
that's 100. Okay. We assuming 100%, but that's a diminishing return as it degenerates. It's going to start going down a little bit in its production. Is that how?
That's correct. And there have been studies by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory that show that the degradation in what we call the power output on average is about 0.5%, I believe, per year. And that has to do with, the exposure. Obviously, it's out in the environment for quite a long time.
Dirty panels.
Even at the end of a 20, 25-year lifetime, we're seeing panels coming out with still 85% operating capacity.
Now, there's another problem I can foresee too with the storage and all these electronic cars, and everything's electronic, everything's got batteries. What are we going to do when all these lithium batteries have to be recycled? That's going to be a disaster.
Well, fortunately, we have some good examples to rely upon. Lithium-ion batteries have been in use in consumer electronics for many, many years, since the advent of the cell phone and laptop computers. So there's actually a very robust lithium-ion recycling battery network in the US that's actually funded by all of the manufacturers as well as others. They've got collection sites you may have seen, like at the Best Buys or a lot of those different stores. And so that battery recycling network is actually scaling up to accommodate the larger EV batteries that we're seeing. And the interesting thing as well about batteries is they also have what we call it a useful second life.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is the accumulation of those batteries in some of the larger solar projects to provide both the solar energy generation and storage on site. So they may, have been batteries that were used in electric vehicles, but together they can provide that storage solution to a larger project as well. And we've seen great demonstration projects at UC San Diego and elsewhere where it's helping them in their own microgrid situation where they're generating electricity with solar and then using those second life batteries, if you will, to actually store the excess. So there's definitely promise there, but you're right.
One thing I have a hard time believing is that the grid, which now we don't have much nuclear left, but we have a lot of petrochemical, that the hydro or the wind or the solar will be able to sustain the grid. We've got to have some kind of backup. And to me, the logical backup for me, the cleanest one is nuclear, if you want to get rid of the carbon.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, as I mentioned before, a good opportunity for diversity and diversification of all of those sources. For things like solar and wind, the thing that really helps with the reliability and so that there isn't this intermittent power quality problem on the grid is the storage, because that allows the excess energy that might be generated during the daytime to also be used later and help solidify and make more reliable that power resource, so that the independent system operators and all those other folks who are trying to do that balancing on, you know, almost an hour to hour, if not minute to minute basis, can look at, you know, the dashboard of all of their resources and say, you know, for this time of night, we know everybody's at home, they're doing homework, they're making dinner. Let's make sure we've got reliable power, say from our nuclear resources, and then we'll be saving, you know, the storage from solar and wind to be used later in the evening or earlier.
I've got another question. I've got 10 solar panels on the house that I bought came with the house. How important and how do you clean those panels to keep them in the high functioning? Because a rain, it doesn't cut it. You got to go up there and scrub it with something else.
I wouldn't recommend that you use anything special or particular, because the glass that's on those panels is a tempered glass. So it does have a special coating on it that helps increase its UV absorption. What I would highly recommend is you just take your garden hose, and if you've got a good sprayer that can head up that way, you could just spray them off yourself. But even the installer who installed the original panels, when they took into account what your system size need might be, they take what's called soiling into account, which would be that buildup of, you know, dirt or and other things, so that they've estimated with that into account. And so again, we really recommend nothing other than just, you know, basic water up there. Even
rain,
you know,
won't cut it.
Rain can be
This
okay,
last storm would.
Yeah, I was going to say the water pressure isn't always what we need with rain, but the last storm was pretty intense. But if you, I wouldn't use like a power washer, but if you've got a good hose with a you know, something that has a decent amount of pressure, that should be fine. But I definitely don't recommend any solvents or Windex or cleaning stuff, because that might infect the coating integrity.
That would be advice. I don't climb ladders anymore at 82, so I can do that from the ground with a high pressure hose.
Absolutely. Yep. Just carry an umbrella while you're doing it.
Anyone else have any questions on?
Yeah, I want to find out, what is the percentage of, you know, we have the sun here a lot in California, in this part of the country. How does it work in the eastern part of the country where they have a lot less sun rays? How's that percentage going, up or down?
Sure, that is a great
question. The second one would be the manufacturing. You said the manufacturing has grown. Is it really, we producing our own solar panels now here in the United States? Is that what the production's coming up?
Yeah, two great questions. So in terms of the sun, it's actually not just the exposure to sun that's important for solar, but it's the irradiance or the actual sunlight that's coming down. And actually in a lot of northern states, their sun intensity is much better in some of the southern states or more populated areas, because they don't have, you know, things like the smog kind of filtering that UV and irradiance from the sun coming to it directly. And even in colder temperatures, it's actually solar works very well because again, you have less of that kind of atmospheric disturbance, and you have some really good irradiance coming. And surprisingly, one of the countries that grew most rapidly with solar was Germany, and they don't have, you know, they're not known for the sunniest weather here and there, but they're still able to get a lot of great solar installed there because of the fact that they're much northern latitude. In terms of your second question, and in just the last, 3 to 5 years, there have been a number of different manufacturers established here in the US specifically. There is, I want to say at least 20, 23 that have locations here in the US. Obviously, Tesla, which used to be Solar City, has a facility in New York. There's a Canadian company called Silfab that's got a manufacturing site in Washington. We've got Jinko Solar in Florida, LG Solar in Alabama. We've also got Hanwha Q Cells in Georgia, Certainteed Solar, which makes like a roof shingle similar to like the fancy Tesla roof shingle, is in San Jose, California. Again, there has been a lot of investment incentive and obviously desire for domestic solar manufacturing. And so that has really spurred people to build manufacturing here. And another one I'll mention is First Solar, which is in Ohio. They're one of the larger manufacturers of a specific kind of solar panel that's often used out in those larger solar projects.
My wife and I just got solar, and we get inundated all the time for people wanting to sell us solar before that. And one of the things we did was we contacted not only the Better Business Bureau, but the state agency, and they told us what the 5 best companies were as far as fewest complaints. And to me, that would be something that most people would want to look at.
Absolutely. I think that is also a great idea. We work, and I think you're talking about the CSLB, the California State License Board, which is similar to other contractors, that they can give you information, on really anybody who does home renovations and plumbing work, et we also do have on our website a consumer protection guide that we publish and that we share with our installer members and other industry installers to let them know what we expect in terms of the quality and the actions that they're taking in order to share information about solar. I think one of the things that we have as a new industry growing pains with is it's not just often the installers that are reaching out and contacting people, but it's a lot of these robo-marketing types of companies that are trying to get leads and that they sell to the installers themselves. And so we've been working with those installers as well to say, look, we really need to professionalize how you're obtaining these interests and leads, and because we don't want to have that same reputation, that you'll find with a lot of those robo-marketers.
One last question for me is, what precious metals are in the solar panels?
Sure. So there are currently, I think you're talking about like rare earth minerals is maybe your concern. And the one thing I'll say about that is the reason they're often characterized as rare earth minerals is because they're just difficult to get a hold of. The supply is very much limited to those areas in which they're mined. And so it's often difficult, and the pricing and the quantity that's available is very restricted. But today, solar panels, both the common ones that you'll see, what we call crystalline on homes and businesses, and then those that are out in the field, which could be similar, or what we call thin film, they don't contain any of those rare earth elements. And so are, similar to electronics, laptops, cell phones, there's very specific uses for each of those minerals and elements, and they're not something that we need in order to convert sunlight to energy or to distribute it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Well, thank you. It was very informative. You are a great speaker. So
Yeah,
I
no
didn't really
problem.
jump I wanted to ask you since I got here real quick. Did Donna say she was going to have student speaker packets by this weekend? Did I misunderstand her?
No, I think you understood. Yeah, I think you understood it correctly. Normally, they are delivered to the district governor at the November COG. So that's happening this weekend. We're crossing our fingers that that will actually take place and that they have them ready to go. And so as soon as she receives them, Gail and I will be figuring out a way to get them into each of your hands.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you
you're
again.
welcome. No problem. And, you know, feel free to reach out. My email is lionevelyn916@gmail.com. Happy to answer any of your questions about the district or solar if I can help you in any way. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna. Oh yeah.
One more thing. I said, like, you need one more thing to do.
It's okay.
All right, great. Thanks.
No
so much
worries.
again.
No problem. You guys have a great day.
You too.